Today we're talking about phonics beyond Key Stage 1. So to start with, what is phonics? How would we define phonics? And I always Google things when I don't know what they mean, as everybody else does. But when you Google what is phonics or define phonics, you get a method of teaching people to read by correlating sounds with symbols in an alphabetic writing system. Now, this is an all right definition to start us off, but there are a couple of problems with it. One of which is that it just talks about reading rather than writing as well. And also it talks about it being a method, but actually phonics is a big body of knowledge that we all need to understand to access our reading and writing system. I much prefer this definition. Phonics is an umbrella term that includes the development of phonemic awareness, which is where we're discriminating and manipulating the phonemes so we can hear and identify sounds and those individual word sounds as well. It's the ability to map the graphemes, which are the letters or groups of letters, to the phonemes, those smallest units of sound in the word. And it's got two key skills that are really important. The ability to blend the phonemes together to make words and read, or the ability to segment words into the phonemes so that we can spell them. So we often talk about English as being a really awkward language with lots of phonics things that don't really work, but it is very, very rare in English to have a word without at least one common grapheme for the phoneme. So if I look at this word nuisance here, I've broken it into its phonemes, and actually quite a lot of the phonemes are the regular grapheme phoneme correspondences that you would expect. There are a couple that are a little bit unusual. I've got UI making the oo sound, and I've got CE making the S sound. However, I say they're a little bit unusual. It's not like they don't appear in other words as well. It also appears in fruit. And the CE does happen on a lot of words that have this ANCE ending, but also words like dance as well. So there's lots of different times where you have those letter sound links. And that brings us on to what makes an effective speller as well. So I'm going to let Amanda take this bit here.
Thank you. So there are 5 main strands to being an effective speller. That's phonological knowledge, orthographic knowledge, morphological knowledge, etymological knowledge, and visual knowledge. So some quite wordy threads there. So we're focusing obviously on phonological knowledge today. But if you want to learn more about the other threads, we do have other webinars available on our website that you can access for free via the Spelling Shed site. So if we put those into a diagram, it will look something like this. We've got the dark blue showing our linguistic knowledge. So that includes your phonological, orthographic, morphological, and etymological knowledge. We do need time to process this and apply it to our spelling. So for example, if I was spelling a word using my phonological knowledge like dog, I'd need to think about what sounds are in the word dog, what letters I'd need to use to represent those sounds, what they look like, and then obviously actually putting them down on the paper. It's much quicker to go via your lexical store. That's how memorize words, that's our visual knowledge. That's our quicker recall, as it were. But that lexical store is built up from our linguistic knowledge. So we're using our phonics to help build up our linguistic knowledge. So English language is a morphophonemic language, and that basically means it's represented through both their sounds and their meanings. So both the phonemes and the morphemes, they function together to represent and correlate. So if we take the word magician, for example, children can use the phoneme morpheme, magic, as the base, and that can give them a clue into magician. So it shows the link between them because you're getting that sound from magic before it, and that's why it's used as a C instead of the sh sound.
Okay, so if we look in the national curriculum as well, this is the bit from the top of the spelling appendix. So it's a really important bunch of information that's crammed in there that we often skip and go looking for the bits that we actually need to teach. But one thing I really want to highlight in here is that phonic knowledge should continue to underpin the spelling even after Key Stage 1. we should still be drawing children's attention to the grapheme phoneme correspondences that fit with what they've already been taught so far, but also the ones that don't fit with what they've already been taught, and highlighting those differences and developing that phonic knowledge there as well. Now, it says underpin, it is alongside the morphology and the etymology, it's alongside the other skills as well, but it is still there. And it gives an excellent example in here of medical and medicine, which is like what Amanda was saying there with magic, how the C is kept, that spelling, even though it's changed the sound there as well. So children need to move from knowing that there's all these possible ways of spelling a word to knowing which one's the correct one. So in Key Stage 1, they get given lots of GPCs through the systematic synthetic phonics teaching, but they need to know which one to use when, and that application of our spelling system isn't usually complete by the end of Key Stage 2. Many of us go on to develop it throughout our adult lives, even as we learn new words. I've got an example here where you might learn a new GPC even that you wouldn't usually be taught in a phonics program. So if I look at the word cafe, I might see that on a sign when I'm out at a shop, and I might hear somebody call it a cafe, so I know that word says cafe. Now, the E with an accent on, I've probably not seen before, probably not learned that in my phonics, but now I can associate that with making the A sound. So then I can apply that new GPC that I've got there to different words like cliche, pate, frappe, rosé, and soufflé as well. So that new E with the accent on is now a new GPC for me. I know that that links to the A sound in those words, so I can apply that when I see new words. And you get some really challenging phonemes. So we are moving beyond what we've learned in Key Stage 1. For example, we are often taught in Key Stage 1 that E and A go together as a digraph, and they make one sound, which they do in some words. Like in T, it makes an E sound, and in some words it makes an E sound, like in head. But in this word, realistic, you can see we've separated it out into the phonemes, and we've got 9 phonemes. The E and the A are actually separated as separate phonemes. And this is because if the EA represented the E sound like we'd normally expect it to do, then what on earth would make the A sound or the sound, the little schwa sound, depending on your pronunciation of that word. So it's not realistic. I need a sound or an A sound before that so the E and the A are separate in this word. It's pushing it that little bit further than what we had in Key Stage 1.
It's really important that we're looking at changing our perspective. It's very common that we're set in the way of it's only a Key Stage 1 element in phonics. So we're trying to transition away from phonics only in Key Stage 1, so thinking only of phonics there, and thinking how can we tie phonics into a Key Stage 2 context to really cement the lessons learned in Key Stage 1, so we're carrying it through. Now, this is backed up by the Education Endowment Foundation. They carried out research looking into enhancing spelling skills in Key Stage 2. They found that obviously phonics still remains a cornerstone in teaching spelling. They emphasised the importance of explicitly teaching the relationship between letters and sounds, and integrating systematic synthetic phonics instruction into Key Stage 2 classrooms can significantly boost students' spelling accuracy. So this is an alphabetic code chart that we have readily available. It is really important to have on hand and to know the alphabetic code. So down the left-hand side in the slashes, you've got the phonemes. They'll be represented in the slashes. And then along the side, you've got the graphemes. So if we take the first one, for example, it's showing the sound A. And that can be represented in different ways. It can be represented with an A, as in ant, an AI, as in plat, an I in meringue, AL in salmon.
And for me and my pronunciation, I've got AU like in laugh. However, we've got the regional marker on there because if I ask Amanda to say that word,
I would say laugh. So mine would come under AR.
Completely different phoneme there. So, and it does also talk a lot about this in the reading framework, about teachers understanding the nature of the English alphabetic code. So it is really important to be aware of these obscure ones as well.
So if we think about phonics in terms of our teaching and what it might look like, this overlapping waves theory can be quite beneficial. So as we said, phonics obviously is quite important. If we think of phonics as the yellow strategy 1, phonics is the main thread, the main teaching element you're going to be using lower down in the school. However, as you go through, and as the national curriculum said, it should still underpin the knowledge. So you'll still be using it throughout the schooling up through year 3 to year 6 and beyond if you wanted to. But it won't be the main element you might be using, but it is still important to underpin the teaching. Now in this scheme, obviously we represent it in different ways. It's not just one set task. It can be shown in multiple different ways. So these are some examples from years 1 and 2, stages 1 and 2, using sound buttons to identify the different words, and the same in stages 3 and 4, years 3 and 4. Also word sorts, really important, looking at the sounds being used. Again, looking at syllable breaks, breaking down the phonemes into the sound buttons in different ways. And again, we continue it up into years 5 and 6 as well. So we've got bottom right here as an example of an Alconian box, where you're breaking the word up into the phonemes. So for example, with attached, you've got the double T there making the T sound. That's why those two letters are in the same box. Again, the CH is making the ch sound in attached, and that's why they're in the same box.
Okay, so we'll have a look at a couple of the lesson plans as well from Spelling Shed. So this one is from stage 4. And it's lesson 2. So it's words with the prefix in meaning not. So it sounds like it's quite a morphology based lesson here because I'm talking specifically about that prefix. But as you look down the lesson, you will still see in the main teaching input, we've got syllable and phoneme maps as well. So we work with the partners to clap out the syllables in this week's words, and we sort them according to the syllables, and we also put the phoneme and maps onto a lot of the words. So that looks like this in the lesson. So it is still really important, even when you've got the morphology element, we're still bringing in that phonics as well, and the orthography with the syllables there. So the children might have lots of these different types to do throughout the lessons. They will get used to doing these. It sometimes takes a bit of time to get used to the more challenging ones, especially if you start Spelling Shed in year 5 or year 6 and you've not done this through year 3 and year 4. However, it is still really good to get the children engaging with those phonemes on those words, so they've got a link with that spelling. And here's an example from stage 6 as well. This is lesson 16. Words where an O sound, is spelled OU or OW. So this is more of a sound focused lesson. We're talking specifically about the O sound. So here the syllable and phoneme mapping is in the introduction, and it is a big focus of it, but we still have those other elements as well. And on this example, instead of using the sound buttons, we've got those Alconian boxes as well. And they're also counting the number of phonemes at the end of the Alconian boxes.
So throughout the Spelling Shed resources, we do use different representations of the same concept, and it just allows for a broader understanding for the children. It gives them a range of methods when working with words. It's a bit like when you're obviously learning maths. If you're doing addition, subtraction, multiplication, you do different methods, a range of methods to reinforce and to let children then decide which ones they think will be most effective to use. So using the different representations we find is really, really valuable for the children.
Okay. So that's the end of our webinar for today. If you've got any questions for me or Amanda, please pop them in the question and answer box, and we'll try and get back to you. You can also email us at support@edshed.com. If you've got any questions about the scheme. You can sign up for a free 30-day trial of Spelling Shed if you haven't got Spelling Shed. So if you want to try it out, that's available to sign up to at edshed.com. And we do also offer in-person CPD training as well. So you can find that on our training page, or you can email us at training@edshed.com. So thank you very much for coming, everybody. We will hang around a moment just in case there are any questions. But other than that, hopefully to see you at the next webinar instead.